gives me a great sense of duty to present to you all the outcomes of the report on the 2020 and 2024 election violence which occurred across various centers in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, elections in Ghana in recent times have been characterized by violence in various forms. In 2020 and 2024 general elections, we recorded some isolated incidents such as violence resulting in loss of life. To address this recurrent and bring justice to the victims, the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, directed the formation of a special investigative task force to re-examine cases of electoral violence fatalities, identify the causes, hold perpetrators accountable, and propose measures to prevent further occurrence. On January 16, 2025, the Inspector General of Police inaugurated a special task force within the Criminal Investigation Department, CID, of the Ghana Police Service. The mandate of the task force was to collaborate with the stakeholders to identify, review, and investigate all electoral violent cases that resulted in fatalities during the 2020 and 2024 general election. The Special Investigation Task Force identified 12 cases that took place during the 2020 and 2024 general election. These cases had resulted in 15 deaths across the country and well over 40 individuals got injured. The report outlined detailed account of all the 12 cases recorded during the period. The detailed report, which has been submitted to His Excellency the President, also contains the various incidents, how they were brought or got to the notice of the police, and actions taken by investigators in line with the laid down investigation protocol and procedure. The report further detailed action taken when the Special Investigative Task Force took over the cases at level initially investigators had reached, and detailed findings derived from further interviews, interrogations, field visits, reconstruction of crime and crime scene, and forensic analysis of various materials of evidence retrieved during the investigation. Every violent incident recorded during the general election presents various criminal offenses which will have been committed by different persons involved. The report took into account a number of incidents where some procedural actions were overlooked. There were instances of clear breaches of discipline, violation of legal requirement, and total neglect by officers who were either present or responsible for situations that required prompt, responsive actions. The focus is to avoid veering into areas that might confuse procedural breaches with the main mandate, which is to investigate, identify, and prosecute persons responsible for death during the two general elections in the years of the 2020 and 2024. There were also instances of persons being rushed to the court on frivolous and vexatious charges when the same incident had resulted in the death of person or two. Great effort was expended to distill these charges and identify persons against whom evidence could be produced for the deaths recorded during these elections, with evidence to sustain criminal charges being preferred against them. Through careful review of police dockets, on-site inspections, and stakeholders interview, the Special Investigative Task Force identified 12 specific cases. I must be quick to add that I have since directed that the report of the Commission on the Election Violence at Ayawaso, West Legon, be implemented fully for justice to prevail. 6 each from the 2020 and the 2024 general election, which collectively led to 15 deaths as mentioned earlier and injured 40 others. These incidents span multiple regions, including Bono East, Greater Accra region, Bono region, Northern region, Central region, Savannah, and Asante region. The circumstances of each case vary, but nearly all involve the use of firearms during confrontation between supporters of the two major political parties and instances where security personnel resorted to the use of live ammunition, warning shots as means of crowd control. Investigation into one of the cases during the 2020 general election at Odogubi was completed. The Attorney General is currently prosecuting 3 persons who property and threatened life. When the rampaging crowd saw the police firing warning shot and started fleeing, the police did not have need to direct their shot at the escaping crowd. It was one such shot that killed the late Sabelina Mukaila. Secondly, there was rioting at the collation center and damage was caused to property and electoral material. The recommendation of the task force is that the family of the deceased person be compensated by the state. The suspects arrested are currently being prosecuted at the High Court in Kumasi. The report has been forwarded to the Attorney General for the compensation to the deceased family. Nkoranza South constituency in Nkoranza. The observation of the task force is that there were 16 soldiers involved, and when they were screened, 5 have been identified as being in the group who were present during the incident. One soldier, Lance Corporal Dakwa Damina Ochre, who was identified as having shot the late Abdul Karim Rafiq alias Tyson, admitted shooting him but justified his action by saying that he saw the deceased trying to disarm his colleague, that's Private Boahin Francis, and that the deceased had drawn a cutlass to slash his colleague. Private Boahin Francis, who could not collate this evidence in full since he was trying to pick up the magazine of his M16 rifle, which had fallen during the struggle when he heard the shot. The evidence collected so far does not show that the deceased committed any breach of the law. The military personnel who were deployed to the collation center had a duty to prevent any interference with the electoral process, and they were also required to maintain and restore peace whenever disorder threatened. The recommendation of the task force is that the family of the Abdul Karim Rafiq be compensated for the untimely death of the deceased. Yet the report too has been forwarded to the Attorney General for advice and the compensation because it involves this soldier that is well established that he really fired the shot. So that has been forwarded to the Attorney General for advice. Offensive North constituency, that's Akumadan. The task force realized that the incident led to the loss of 2 persons and injured 2 others. The observation of the task force is that the late Jacob Nalo was not in the group that went to take over the fertilizer in the warehouse. The late Solomon DeMille lost his life as a result of stray bullets. The task force, through discreet investigation, identified 12 suspects as those who attacked and subsequently lynched deceased Jacob Nlo. 5 of the 12 have been arrested and before the Kumasi High Court for Kumasi and are currently in prison custody, yet to meet their bail condition. The others are on the run, and the police is making every effort to get them arrested to face justice. Ahafo Southwest, that's Mankranso. The observation of the task force was that a chaotic situation at the collation center caused damage to property and almost brought the collation process to a halt. There was therefore the need for the military men to intervene. However, directing rifle shots at the crowd cannot be an acceptable crowd control method, since it endangers the life of fleeing youth and bystanders, including the late Dominic Nimo, who was standing at a distance. The 4 victims who sustained gunshot injuries deny being involved in creating the chaos. They claim to be standing some distance away when they were hit by the bullet. In a screening exercise, 11 soldiers were identified as those detailed at the constituency center in Mankranso on the December 7, 2024. 8 of the soldiers interviewed admitted firing warning shots alongside the police to disperse the mob, which was attacking the collation center. They denied firing into the crowd and further said that they were not aware that anybody was hit by a bullet during the process. There was no doubt that the late Dominic Nimo died from the shot fired by the soldiers. Similarly, the 4 victims also got their injuries through the same process. The recommendation of the Special Task Force is that the family of the late Dominic, as well as the 4 persons who sustained the gunshot injuries, should be compensated by the state. The report has since been forwarded to the Attorney General for advice and the compensations to the families of the deceased and the injured persons. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, it is worth noting that the report has been sent to the Office of the Attorney General for further actions and prosecutions. As Minister for Interior, I want to assure the public that government, under the able leadership of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, is committed to upholding the rule of law and to ensuring that all those responsible for the violence are held accountable. Government will continue to work with all stakeholders to strengthen democratic institutions and ensure that elections in the country are peaceful. God bless our